What is the most hilarious historical fact you know? The marathon at the 1904 Olympics in St. Louis. The first place finisher did most of the race in a car. He had intended to drop out, and got a car back to the stadium to get his change of clothes, and just kind of started jogging when he heard the fanfare. The second place finisher was carried across the finish line, legs technically twitching, by his trainers. They had been refusing him water, and giving him a mixture of brandy and rat poison for the entire race. Doping wasn't illegal yet, and this was a terrible attempt at it, so he got the gold when the first guy was revealed. Third finisher was unremarkable, somehow. Fourth finisher was a Cuban mailman, who had raised the funds to attend the Olympics by running non-stop around his entire country. He landed in New Orleans, and promptly lost all of the traveling money on a riverboat casino. He ran the race in dress shoes and long trousers, cut off at the knee by a fellow competitor with a knife. He probably would have come in first, well, second, behind the car, had it not been for the hour nap he took on the side of the track after eating rotten apples he found on the side of the race. 9th and 12th finishers were from South Africa, and ran barefoot. South Africa didn't actually send a delegation, these were students who just happened to be in town, and thought it sounded fun. 9th was chased a mile off course by angry dogs. Note, these are the first Africans to compete in any modern Olympic event. Half the participants had never raced competitively before. Some died. St. Louis only had one water stop on the entire run. This, coupled with the dusty road, and exacerbated by the cars kicking up dust, lead to the above fatalities. And yet, somehow, rat poison guy survived to get the gold. The Russian delegation arrived a week late, because they were still using the Julian calendar. In 1904. Seriously. This needs to be a movie. Just to clarify, the second place finisher wasn't given a random rat poison for no reason. He was given strychnine, which is a common rat poison, but acts as a stimulant in small doses. His legs were twitching because, basically, he reached the dose limit and was dying. His trainers carried him over the finish line and straight to waiting doctors. As for first place, the car broke down, which is why he was running again. He also took photos with Theodore Roosevelt's daughter during his celebration. By the time other people started finishing, they couldn't believe he won because he waved at them from the car. That whole Olympics was crazy. Almost 600 out 650 Olympians were from America, mainly because it was the first Olympics held outside of Europe. Notorious pirate Benjamin Hornigold once attacked a ship just to steal all of the crew members' hats. His men had gotten drunk and lost their hats during a party the night before and decided to board a ship to get replacements. Brazil and France almost went to war because they had a disagreement about lobsters. The event is known as the Lobster War. France thought lobsters swim, therefore they were above Brazilian soil and could be fished by any vessel, and Brazil thought lobsters crawled on the ocean's floor, therefore are Brazilian property. Brazil's foreign affairs minister had this to say about it: "The attitude of France is inadmissible, and our government will not retreat. The lobster will not be caught." It ended when they agreed that actually lobsters don't crawl nor swim, they leap. Julius Caesar had a letter dispatched via messenger while the Senate was in session. Convinced he was sending a message to his collaborators, Senator Cato the Younger demanded that the letter be read in open session to be entered into the annals of the Senate forever. Caesar allowed the letter to be read, and thus the most filthy love letter Caesar had written to his lover at the time, Cato's half-sister Servilia, got entered into historical record forever. Andrew Jackson's pet Parrot was ejected from Jackson's funeral for swearing, "Will never not make me giggle." Many of the streets in Monterey, California are named after prostitutes. The local madam kept the town out of bankruptcy on a few conditions, and named the streets after her favorite workers. Australia's 17th Prime Minister went swimming in the ocean one day and never came back, presumed drowned. In honor of his memory, in typical Australian fashion, we named a swimming pool after him. The Wily D, which was a U.S. Navy destroyer during World War II. Amongst its exploits, the ship dragged its anchor along several ships when leaving port, fired its 5-inch gun at their own base, which landed in the base commander's yard during a dinner party, accidentally launched a torpedo at the battleship Iowa, which was transporting the President of the United States, and was eventually sunk by a Japanese kamikaze plane that was shot down and sunk, then detonated under the Wily D. Not really haha funny, But a surprising number of American submariners in WW2 were lost when they were accidentally left above decks as the submarine dove. This has been a head-scratcher for me, but Wily D provides a possible answer. In a big war like that, many vessels must have been run by clowns. In 897 the former pope, who had been dead for 7 months, was dug up and put on trial for perjury and heresy. He was convicted. Fun fact: after this happened on 2 separate occasions, the Vatican instated a law to say that former popes couldn't be prosecuted after they had died. Germany once attempted to pass off one of their naval ships as an English ship to sneak up on the coast of England and attack. The first ship Germany encountered was the ship they disguised themselves as. Stalin tried to use moose in battle, like horses. Shockingly, he did not succeed. The Stalin story is fake, the story originating with an April Fool's prank. However, Gustavus II Adolphus, King of Sweden during the 17th century and general military innovator, did attempt to train moose cavalry, the idea being that moose cavalry would be terrifying. It was not one of his successful military experiments. The story about the German Cap Trafalgar having been commandeered by Germany as an auxiliary cruiser and disguised as RMS Carmania and then encountering RMS Carmania, which had itself been commandeered as an auxiliary cruiser for the British. That one is true. British Navy in WW1 had battleships disguised as passenger and merchant ships with some of the sailors cross-dressing as women. This was to entice German U-boats to surface as they would frequently attack unarmed and unescorted merchant ships. During WW2, New Zealand had sent all of its forces to Europe and Africa to battle the Germans, so when Japan entered the war, NZ felt a lot more vulnerable, seeing as it practically had no real defenses to throw back an invasion, seeing as the war was being fought on the other side of the planet. NZ was extra worried as we had no tanks in NZ as we didn't produce any at this time. Our response was to develop a home-made tank built on top of an old tractor chassis. The end product was a hilariously slow, underarmed, unmaneuverable tank that wasn't going to stop any enemy force. When the tank was unveiled by its creator, Bob Semple, Parliament laughed at him, to which he responded, "Well, I don't see you guys coming up with anything better." In the end, the Semple tank never saw combat, and the tanks were converted back into tractors as it was thought they would help the war effort better that way. Saying that though, Japan never did invade NZ, so maybe the Semple tank did its job so good it scared Japan away. Charondas was a celebrated lawmaker in Catania, in present-day Sicily. Diodorus Siculus stated that Charondas issued a law that anyone who brought weapons into the assembly must be put to death. Charondas ran to the assembly one day because he was being ambushed, and he wanted help. Unfortunately, he still had a sword attached to himself, so in order to uphold his own law, he committed suicide. Caesar once got kidnapped by pirates, was outraged when he found out the ransom they were asking was too low, and threw a tantrum and made them raise it. He actually befriended them as well. After they let him go, he came back with an army and crucified them. My history teacher told the story way better, but it's a great tale. It's even better. He was very friendly during the whole thing. He told them to raise his bounty to be more fitting of a man of his stature, which he really wasn't yet, but he had moxie. He even helped arrange who to make the demands to. Then, he, very sweetly, told them he would be back and kill them all for their transgressions. I'm sure they all had a big ol' laugh. Then he did just that. Napoleon was once attacked by a horde of rabbits. Basically, a rabbit hunt was set up to celebrate the treaties of Tilsit, and they ended up amassing somewhere between hundreds and thousands of rabbits. Accounts vary. Anyway, the day of the hunt they set the rabbits in cages surrounding the area that they would be hunting in. They released them once everyone was set, but instead of being scared, the bunnies swarmed the hunting party. At first they thought it was funny, but then it got overwhelming and Napoleon and the others had to flee from the bunnies in a coach. In the 1920s, radium had recently been discovered, and it was seen similarly to how titanium is seen now. People back then didn't know that radiation was harmful. In fact, many thought it was healthy. Just like today, many radium-branded products back then quite fortunately contained no such radium. Some unfortunately did. Such as watches that had radium-coated paint that glowed in the dark. The production of these, however, didn't last too long, as the women who painted these watches would lick the brush to get them to a fine point. You can see where that went. What is the most hilarious historical fact you know? Leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.